So we just went through your list of no-nos, which to clarify that this is for problem dogs.
Right.
These are dogs that have come out of the shelter that
We don't know
their
their
history. Right?
Right.
So I think that clarification was important, even though these same things can happen in any dog, right? But in terms of what people did ask for in this, in the comments, were things that they can do with their dogs.
Okay.
So, you know, in terms of trying to have to rethink about how to do stuff with our dogs so that we feel fulfilled. Also, we're bonding with them, maybe relearning. There's certain things I can't do with my dogs because they'll fight. Right. And I have had to go through sort of a grieving process as I took those things out of our life and had to find new ways to enjoy them so that we wouldn't have any fights and I didn't, you know, stimulate those problems. So I understand how people feel like, well, what can I do? Because this is all I know.
Right, exactly.
You know, and this isn't fluffy. That's, you know, this like there's I have some neurotic dogs that have come out of shelters in bad situations.
Right. You know, again, since the beginning of people working with dogs, we've always been taught to bring out the prey drive in them. Everything we do revolves around them using their mouth, raising the cortisol level, chasing something, challenging something. I mean, this is what society has taught us.
Well, and everything at the store is that too.
Yeah, you know, I just imagine a bunch of people sitting in a room and someone comes up with this idea, let's take a stuffed animal and put a squeak in it. And then someone else saying, well, what are we going to do that for? They're just going to tear it up. And then that person says, I know, but they'll buy another one.
Right.
Billion-dollar industry.
Right.
I can't believe that they don't know what they're doing. They know exactly what they're doing. Who came up with the concept of the squeak to put it in the toy to begin with? Someone with knowledge about what that meant, you see? And so the very thing that we try to restrict in a dog to make them a nice, calm dog, these people have taught a different meaning to the dog. So the dog goes in the opposite way, and we're thinking at someday, sometime, this dog is going to be this wonderful dog that we want, but the things that we're doing is making him the opposite of that.
Right.
So, you know, I like to look in terms of the therapy dog concept. When everyone wants to say, this is a wonderful dog, they say this is a therapy dog. Right? Which is the top of the line type dog.
Right. And that's becoming more prevalent.
Yeah, and but then the thing is, we lie.
Right.
We put a bandana around his neck and put sunglasses on him and dress him up and say he's a therapy dog. And then they go outside and they do all these things that make him something other than that. Okay? We need to look in terms of the therapy concept of dogs. Dogs that can help us in our life to be great members of society, to assist us. To me, that's a better dog. Now, as far as throwing, I would suggest to people to throw treats. Okay? The dog understands it. We understand it. You see? Because when we're throwing inanimate objects like balls, the reason that the human does it will say, because I'm trying to give the dog exercise.
Right.
But if you ask the dog, why are you chasing? The dog is not going to say, oh, he's throwing it because
I needed some cardio.
I need some cardio, right? So you've got two different meanings, you see?
Yeah.
And they don't go together well. You know, it doesn't end up well for most dogs that chase after things like that. So throwing food would be a great game to do.
What about catching food too, like throwing it up in the air and the kid?
Yeah, as long as it's ending up here,
right? Okay.
It makes sense to the dog.
Right.
There's nothing more wonderful to me than going to an empty field, throw my wallet in the field, and have my dog go and find it. because he's tuned into his scent, my scent,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I teach him a game search,
Mm-hmm.
and he goes and finds it. Rather than just feeding your dog sometimes, why don't you hide their bowl?
Mm-hmm.
Teach him how to find that food and eat it.
Mm-hmm.
Because now he's being a predator, he's hunting, and when he gets to the end, he eats the food.
So the natural cycle gets completed there.
It's all about understanding it from the dog's perspective so that it makes sense to him.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not understood by him, he's the one that's going to pay for misunderstanding. And that's not fair. You know, if you've got a teacher that's teaching kids how to do something and the kids can't get it, then maybe we need to look at a different teacher. You see,
Mm-hmm.
we can't blame the kid. It's like a potter who makes a pot and doesn't come out right. He blames the pot. Well, you made it.
Mm-hmm.
You see? So games like that teach them how to help us. The dog that goes out and gets the newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
I taught a dog once to retrieve the remote control for the television.
Mm-hmm.
So he gets the remote control. The reward is, okay, come on, get on the couch and watch television with me. And I turn the TV on.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes I'll sit down on the couch. The dog will go right over, find the remote control, bring it back to me, and jump on the couch and fall asleep and watch. See, things like that.
Right.
So easy to teach a dog to do. Or to teach your dog to tell you when your cell phone is ringing, to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that it's ringing or vibrating.
Mm-hmm.
These are some of the things that we can do with our dogs that elevate their minds from
Mhm.
this elementary state,
Mm-hmm.
you see? And they're so simple to do. So games like that, you know, are wonderful games to play with your dog. But because we haven't taught them that, we don't even feel that it's possible.
So say somebody took that information and then they liked the idea of that. Like some of the people on this thread who asked about, I'd like a list of things I can do, but maybe they don't know how to teach their dog to go find their wallet.
Sure, sure. You know, I have a dog here named Snickers.
Yeah.
And Snicker has a job where during this time of the year, baby birds fall out of their nests.
Mm-hmm.
He comes to me to tell me that this bird is on the ground.
Right.
And I go pick him up and put him back in the nest.
Right.
Now, how wonderful a job is that? That's a job.
Right.
You see? He's not chasing birds.
No, he's so
He
cute.
doesn't have
do.
birds, stuffed animal birds that he puts in his mouth and shakes around.
Mm-hmm.
You understand? So I'm actually elevating his mind to think on a higher level. We all have dogs that we treat like our kids, right? And at some point, our kids grow up and we start to talk to them in a more intelligent way,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Not like children.
Something. Okay, that's good.
And so we have to do that with our dogs too, you know, to make them a great member of our family, you know. And the problem with raising the cortisol level and the energy level is it doesn't require thinking, it's just a reaction. I want my dogs thinking. There's an old saying, how do you control a predator? And the answer is by making him feel like prey.
Mm-hmm.
Prey animals have to think. The sheep think, the rabbit thinks, the deer thinks before it makes moves.
Mm-hmm.
Predators just rush right in.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to be that, you know? So I want my dogs thinking more. If you can make your dog think more and not from a stimulated mindset, because that's where most dogs get in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many, many ways to make them members of society, you know? But we have to look in terms of the therapy concept, you know? Therapy dogs are the most social dogs in the world. They go everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, we have to look and say, well, if the therapy dog can go everywhere, why isn't my dog able to do that? And you have only to think about the things that you're doing with your dog.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine a person that can't see is out with his dog on the street and someone throws a ball and the dog takes off after the ball and knocks the person down?
Mm-hmm. But a therapy dog would never do that.
It's not
I mean, a seeing eye dog.
exactly, you know?
But so, if somebody doesn't know how to, do you have any tips?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something we can get into.
Okay.
I don't think here is the key. I think that the key here is to have that paradigm shift in our thinking so that we start thinking in those areas.
Right.
You know?
And maybe people might even just be inspired to just try stuff on their own. And that in
Absolutely.
itself can be a bonding experience.
Exactly. What, you know, we have to think, how come I can't stop throwing the ball? You know? I mean, the dog doesn't know what a ball is until we introduce him to that. You see? So we do it for ourselves, hoping that the dog is enjoying himself. So when we see him acting neurotic, we say, oh, he loves that. Doesn't necessarily mean he likes that. It just means that he's acting neurotic. You know, he's just energetic, chasing after something, grabbing it. It doesn't necessarily mean he likes it. He's doing it because you taught him to do it. You're tapping into his drive that they don't need anymore. Their food comes in a can and a bag. They don't have to chase down food to eat it. So we don't have to go in that direction. Why not look at something new and different and refreshing? If we want to save dogs' lives and we want people to take dogs out of the shelter, then we have to start thinking like this.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of the dogs that come out of the shelter, they do have, if they don't have issues when they come out, they end up with issues with the person very quickly. At least that's my experience rescuing here in LA.
Well, you know, I've seen a lot of rescuers that are actually at fault with doing these types of things with their dogs. You know, playing tug of war, throwing balls, giving them toys to play with, pumping them up, teaching the dog to move forward towards the human being, and raising the cortisol level, you know. And they're doing it, why? Because they love the dog. It's all done out of love and affection, but love and affection can produce aggression in our dogs. You've got a dog who's created under a system of hierarchy, which means they're thinking of climbing every second of every minute. So when you start doing certain types of positive reinforcement with that kind of mind, then you are reinforcing the climbing.
Right. And that's why 3 weeks after the shelter pull, or 6 weeks in, they are climbing, and all of a sudden,
right,
you have a whole different animal.
And we've rewarded that.
Right.
So how then can the dog let it go? You see? Because we've been taught, let's tell him he's wonderful. Let's tell him life is wonderful. There's no bad things. You've had a bad life, and now I want you to go into this different reality where everything is wonderful, and that's a lie, even for human beings. You see? We should tell our dogs what we don't like. This is my belief. Tell my dog what I don't like. It's not important for me to tell him what I like. Just tell them what I don't like. If he gets that, there would be no one walking in my door. Because you can tell your dog what you don't like. And I know that's a difficult thing and people are not going to do it. I'm not for everyone. I'm not saying that if you have a dog and you're not having problems that you should switch over now and do what I'm saying. I was created out of those people who were fed up with the system killing their dogs and no one could help them. That's how I was born into this, okay? So you can't deny me. I am part of the solution to the problem because I'm giving you some information that has never been given to society. Why hasn't it been given? I don't know. I could only think that if you don't work in aggression, then you can't see this. A lot of times you'll get people who have dogs. Maybe they have 2 dogs. Chances are they have 1. And they go to the shelter to get that dog, and they take a lot of time picking that dog to make sure he's perfect.
That was it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they'll get that perfect dog who somehow ended up in the shelter because maybe he got out of the yard. Okay? And they can do all these wonderful things with their dog with minimum difficulties. And that person hearing what I'm saying is not going to accept it. Okay? But that person may have jumped over 20 or 30 dogs that needed a home to find that one dog that fit them.
Right.
Okay? And then they turn and they say, hey, you got a bad dog, and you should not be telling your dog what to do, and you know, you need to do positive stuff and blah blah blah, not knowing that the positive stuff that they've been misinformed with is actually what got them in the shelter to begin with.
Right, and then what happens to the dogs that don't fit into these typical lifestyles? They're dead bodies lined
Yeah,
up.
most people say forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
They're unfixable. You see?
They're unpredictable, they're unfixable, they're aggressive, they're not adoptable.
Exactly.
And the list goes on and on.
So if you don't understand aggression, if you don't want to take the time to understand the number one most important thing that's going to save a dog's life, if you want to take a blind eye to that and only look at the positive stuff that's happening, but your positive stuff is making you jump over 50 or 60 dogs because you don't want to be a little uncomfortable to change that dog's life, to go back in time and say, you missed this part of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Let me reintroduce this to you, okay? And so that you can be the dog that everyone else has.
Right.
That's what I do. That's what I teach people to do. Now, if you're not that kind of person, you're not a daring person where you were willing to go out on a limb to save a dog's life, you are not going to understand what I'm talking about. You're not going to say, I agree with him, you see? But you're not me, and you don't see the hundreds and thousands of dogs that I've seen and heard about that were put to sleep because they were misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
Aggression is the highest form of communication for animals because they're misunderstood. They didn't get the fundamentals. It's like a kid that should have started out in the first grade and he starts out in fifth grade.
Right.
How's he going to keep up? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got to go back, put him in continuation, give him a special teacher that's going to teach him what he didn't get, the fundamentals, and then bring him along in the rehabilitation process so that he can be with those kids.
Right.
If you don't believe that that's possible, okay, then you haven't been around enough people that have been helped or that need to be helped in life. You know, and it's our ego that won't allow us to go into those areas because we want what we want. You see? And it's not fair to the animal. It was a person that interfered with their life to begin with. It should be a person that helps them to come back to what we need for them to be.
Right.
And that's what I teach. And is there fighting? Is there aggression? Yes, all of that is true. But look, that's what it's about. That's why they're here.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's a jump. It's a leap that I'm asking people to do. But you know what? There's a lot of people out there that have the heart. They just don't have the knowledge.
Right.
And so I'm here to give the knowledge that I have that has worked for me. Okay? And it does not revolve around treats. It does not revolve around saying good boy and good girl. It does not revolve around the traditional positive reinforcement that we are used to. But it does revolve around the way nature intended dogs to process information.